First topic we're going to go over is how do I get customers? The easiest way is your friends and family. Easiest way is ask your friends and family. Ask them if they know of anybody that needs services. Spread the word that you're starting a business or expanding your service, whatever it may be. But that's the easiest, and they're your friends and family, so they're the easiest to talk to. Next would be to call companies in the local area, whether that could be your potential competition or even suppliers. You'd be surprised at how many businesses don't do certain things. A big one that comes to mind is paver repairs, sealing, cleaning, anything along those lines. A lot of companies don't really like to take that on. So it's a good way for you to get your foothold in the door and start establishing some experience, and that way you can move on to installs relatively easily. And working on repairs, you kind of know why these patios are failing, and now you have a better understanding moving forward with your installations. So again, local companies, potential competition, the suppliers. There's probably a couple suppliers in your area to reach out to, and sometimes they'll allow you to put business cards out at their front desk. And the better a relationship that you have with these suppliers, the better off you're going to be down the road. Whether that's going to return material to them after they come off the project, information, call them when you have questions if you're in hard spots. They'll also have all the contact information for the local product reps, for instance, like Unilock or TechoBlock, places like that. They'll have contact info for those supply reps, and those are a great resource to have in your back pocket. The better relationship you have with them too, the better off you're going to be going on down the road. So working on these simpler projects is going to help build your confidence and experience, which is going to help you sell those projects going down the road. When you talk to the customers, you're going to actually know what you're talking about. And it'd be better to learn on repair type projects because you're coming behind someone as opposed to doing a fresh install and then a couple weeks later having to come back and fix stuff that should have been avoided. So it's a good idea to start small and work yourself bigger, or work up to bigger projects. Another area that you can leave business cards, local hardware stores, some restaurants allow you to leave your business card up. Take advantage of all those places. It's free advertising. All you have to do is really buy business cards, which are relatively inexpensive. So these are the easiest ways to get customers when first starting out with your business. Having a social media presence is another easy way. Just documenting your projects as you're going, taking pictures, videos, sharing them, what's going on, daily walkthrough videos. Every time you're releasing a piece of content, it's like a little seed you're sowing to get a potential lead. So do it as much as you can. I'll be honest, I don't do it daily. I have a hard time staying consistent with my social media presence, but I have enough of it, and that's where I do some paid ads. And the paid ads are enough to get us business and keep our crew fed plenty. So once you get enough revenue, or if you have the capacity to do paid ads, I'm all for paid ads. You just need to know how to do it, and we'll have a video explaining that more in depth. But for right now, this is kind of more of the basics, just getting started out, limited resources kind of thing. Next thing we're going to talk about is equipment and tools. So just getting started out, you might not have everything that you need, so you're gonna have to go with the basics. We're gonna provide a Google Doc that has a list of the basic tools you'll need for starting a hardscape business. Started in order of importance, with the first being the most important at the top. A truck, obviously that's gonna be a big one for starting out. You're gonna want a vehicle that is suited for this type of work. So typically that's some form of a truck. If you're really strapped, it's going to be, maybe a Ford Ranger or something of that nature, maybe a 1500. Ideally, a good starting point, if you can, is like a 2500 or a 250, that type of class. That's going to haul more of the equipment and things you'll need most commonly in hardscape. So obviously that's not always easy to get started right away. Some of you guys might be starting in a car or some kind of SUV, and that's where doing paver repairs or small projects like that makes that easy, because you can carry most of those tools in a small car or small SUV. So if you don't have a truck, start working up and saving for one. You can tell your customers it's not a big deal. You can tell your customers your truck's in the shop right now and that you're just working out of your car. So kind of fake it till you make it type thing. once you start getting into things and start buying more serious equipment, you'll find that so for us, we do a lot of renting. I imagine a lot of other companies, especially as they're getting started out, they do a lot of renting. Even established companies, they rent equipment all the time. So that's another big thing that you're going to want to do is establish a relationship with your local rental yard. The better relationship you have with them, the better off you're going to be. They're going to help when machines break down. They're going to be a little more friendly if you have a good relationship with them, as opposed to if you're known as the guy that always fucks shit up. So, excuse me, the guy that always messes stuff up.
I just wanted to touch on renting versus financing a machine and give you some perspective. So, you're probably an average employee is going to cost you. Your average employee is probably going to cost you about $3,000 per month. If you were to finance or lease a mini skid steer, you're looking at about $750, maybe $800, maybe even a little less than $750 if you got good credit. But to give you an idea, that machine can do at least 4 times the amount of work of one employee. So if you're a small operation, a mini skid steer is quite an appealing option if you look at it from that standpoint, as it's $700 a month, let's say. It's going to show up every day for you to work, especially if it's a new machine. All it needs is diesel and some routine maintenance, and it's going to cost you a quarter of what an employee costs. Now, obviously, you need to have someone to run it, but if you're, like I said, a small operation, you and somebody else, or even you by yourself, you and a dingo can get a lot done compared to you and 3 of your friends. So, just something to think about.
Our first dump trailer was actually purchased from a rental yard. So it was a kind of a rent-to-own scenario. I rented it for X amount of months, and a lot of these places will be willing to take a certain percentage of the amount that you've paid for the rental and apply it towards the purchase price. So for instance, it might have been a $7,000 dump trailer. I had rented it and paid like $4,000 over the summer. And so he took roughly $2,000 and applied it to the purchase price, which made it a lot easier. And then he continued to let me make payments on that. So again, going back to if you have a good relationship with the rental yard, they'll be willing to work with you. Obviously, you can always go with financing or buying pre-owned, or even financing a pre-owned. It's kind of 2 philosophies on that. I'm somewhat mechanically inclined, but not really mechanically inclined, more of a basic type of skill level. So I'm more inclined to finance a new vehicle or something that's slightly used, because I want it to be more reliable and I don't want to be out there wrenching on it. Oil changes, basic things like that, brakes, no problem. But I don't want to be out there making major repairs myself, because I don't have the time and I'm not good at it. I'm better off. Most of the time, we're better off spending our time hardscaping, because we can make more money per hour that way, and pay someone that knows what they're doing. Maybe they charge more per hour, but they're going to get it done quicker and right. So again, if you have the ability to finance a new vehicle and you're not mechanically inclined, that would probably be the route that I'd recommend. If you're mechanically inclined, can wrench on trucks, vehicles, equipment, no problem, then you might want to go with the pre-owned route. You get a better deal up front, and you just be spending more on the back end on repairs. There's also leasing. Leasing can be a pretty, what am I trying to say? It can be a pretty appealing option. You get a lower monthly rate than typically financing. You can still write off the payments. Excuse me. You can still write off the payments, so that's good for tax purposes. And it still helps build your credit. So you can also finance equipment. You can do the rent-to-own route with equipment. And when I say equipment in this instance, I'm talking more about the larger pieces of equipment, like say a mini skid steer, or what a lot of people call dingoes. Bobcats is often referred to in the industry, or skid steers, track loaders, things getting larger in the $50, $60, $70, $80,000 per unit. You can still do the same thing, rent to own. If you know you're booked out, or you're going to be booked out this whole summer and into winter, then why not do rent to own? And you don't have to do any credit pull, no credit check. You are paying higher for per month renting it, but you have less risk. So say your work dries up, you can return that machine back to the rental yard and you're not stuck with a monthly payment. So that covers it for equipment and tools. We're going to create a Google Doc and it'll be included in the community. So it'll have a breakdown of all the tools and equipment that you'll need and list of importance and different ways to acquire those. We'll even have some rough price points in there, so you have some frame of reference of what you're getting into. So the next thing we'll be talking about is estimates. In just a second, we'll be flipping over to a screen recording of me going through our estimating software and kind of how those are broken down and how we come up with those. For this portion of the video, we're going to assume that you have an idea of how to do a walkthrough with a customer, get measurements for the areas that they're wanting the project done, and being able to take those numbers and work off of formulas, I guess, and create the estimate. So we will have a video doing a walkthrough of from on-site consultation, getting your measurements, to design, and then turning that into a itemized estimate for your customer. So we'll go ahead and switch over to the screen recording. All right, so we're going to go through how we create estimates using this program called Wave. It's free to use. They do have paid versions. We've been using this for, I think, over 8 years now. Does estimating, invoices, recurring invoices, various other things that we can get into at a later date. We will be rolling out our own software that will take care of estimating, invoicing. It's also going to be a CRM software, which stands for Customer Relationship Management. This helps you stay organized, follow-ups, make sure you're responding to leads in a timely manner. Just helps you keep your business organized. It's going to also have a few other functions, but that'll be included in our community, and it's going to be pretty exciting once that rolls out here in the next month or two. But for right now, getting started out, we're going to show you how we used to do it, and then we will be uploading a tutorial on how we use our new software. So here we go. We'll just do one estimate for right now. We'll start off with a paver patio. So these templates we created ourselves. Whenever we have a paver patio customer, we'll go over here, duplicate. Technically, this isn't really a template function in this program called Wave. It's just a way we found to work around it. So it's a draft estimate that then we just keep duplicating. And then once we duplicate, we go up here and choose a different customer. These customers, 90% of them are uploaded automatically. So we use a program called Zapier, which is basically like a program or an app that facilitates communication through a bunch of other apps. So for instance, when a Facebook lead comes through, their contact information is automatically uploaded to our CRM software, which is then also automatically creates a customer in Wave. So this is all done without us having to do any manual entry, which saves quite a bit of time. So then we can go in here, find the name, whether we have to search it, whatever it be, find the name, apply it to this estimate, and then continue on with the filling out the line item estimate. So these are typically how we have our estimates broken down, the labor at the very top, and then kind of going down from there. So based on your notes and how you decide how you want to figure out your production. Some guys strictly stick to a kind of square foot model. I try to map out the project in days. So day 1 is this, day 2 is this, day 3 is this, day 4 is this, day 5 is this, and so on. And then the larger the project is, the more buffer or space I give myself. So small projects, you're typically going to have a small percentage or a small chance of the project changing drastically from what you estimate to what it actually takes. So obviously, as more time passes and more you go through more projects, you get better at this. But then you also want to track that and double check it with like production rates and things of that nature. So you may hear me say that the average price for paver installation is around $30 per square foot.
which is true. It could be anywhere from 30 to 40, and it could be less than 30, but 30 is a good average. That's not necessarily how we price the project. We don't just say, oh, they want a 500 square foot patio. 500 square feet times 30 is $15,000. That's not necessarily how we come up with it. Because projects, especially in my area, site access is never the same and can play a crucial role, or can affect the project quite a bit. So that's why I try and break down the project by day, and it helps me kind of wrap my head around what's going to be accomplished each day, and then kind of gives the crew some structure of what they're looking at going into the project. So we'll click on this. Let's see, can I expand this? I hate that. For some reason, sometimes you can expand it. Anyways, so here you can see this is some generic verbiage that we just have in there. We typically edit this based on the specific project. So kind of going back to the day 1, day 2, day 3. So for instance, we might say day 1 is excavate paver area, so on and so forth. But this day 1 could also be remove 3 trees, take apart the fence, and mobilize your equipment. That could be all you get accomplished in day 1. And then so day 2 would be excavating your base, bringing in gravel, and so on and so forth. So this is going to vary, but we generally have this generic knowledge in there that's typical with each project, and then we add it to the days accordingly. So you might not be installing pavers till day 3. And like I said, day 1 could be remove trees, mobilize. Well, technically that would be the other way around. Go ahead and add day 2, but then mobilize equipment. Mobilize equipment, remove trees, take apart fence. So you can get as specific or not specific as you want, depending on if you're going to be on site a lot. You may not need to be as specific because you know the project and you're going to be there to guide your guys. If you're not on project and you have multiple crews, then you might want to be more specific. That way they can just reference these notes and not need your input. So that's kind of how we go with the labor. The pavers portion, general rule of thumb is, say you have a 10 by 10 patio, which is 100 square feet. You want to add at least 10% to that number of what you order. So if you need 100 square feet of pavers, you should really order like 110 or 120. One, there's going to be probably breaks. Some of the pavers might be chipped just from the factory, and you're gonna be able to return those, but you don't want to make a special trip and go back and get 5 more pavers because 15 of them were busted and you only need 5. So now you're running back to the store to get 5 more, when it would just be easier to have the adequate amount, and then when you're done with the project, return everything at once. A lot of times you have multiple materials that are able to be returned. Just kind of depends on how accurate you are and how much fluff you give yourself. So, and that's kind of a general rule for everything. Poly sand, sealer, edging material, gravel, decking, just about any kind of material like that. Now, with pool, like an actual fiberglass shell, you can't order 10% more of a shell. So, hopefully you guys understand that. So yeah, if you don't already know what goes into a paver project, you obviously have the labor, the pavers, your edging material. So whether this is plastic, steel, concrete, there's a couple different options. We'll get into that in another video. This is more about creating the estimate. So we have our base material. So right here you see we have listed dense grade aggregate, or DGA. This is a non-permeable base, which means it does not let water flow through. Depending on your area and your specific project, you might want to go with a dense grade aggregate. Around here we call it 411s or 304s. It's basically crushed limestone that is anywhere from 1 inch in size down to dust. It compacts and is firm, almost like concrete once compacted properly. You do have to wet it down to help agitate the material and settle it completely. And then there's the opposite side of that. like I said, this is dense grade aggregate. There's what we call open grade base, and this is the opposite. It's permeable, so it lets water flow through. But the key here is that water has to be able to flow and keep moving. You don't want your patio be the low spot of the yard, and then you dig out your gravel base, and then water just sits on your patio in a pool, basically hidden under your pavers, because that's only all that's going to do over time is cause settling and sinking issues. So your site has to be set up for open grade. I see a lot of people promoting open grade base and just using it wherever, and that's not the case. Talk to a local engineer or any kind of civil engineer, and I imagine they will tell you otherwise. Especially when you get into working on retaining walls and engineered retaining wall projects, their blueprints detail everything: what type of gravels you're supposed to use, what am I trying to think? And like kind of the constraints. It might be this size only, and how far, how wide, all those things. So you can't deviate from their plan. Otherwise, they're no longer liable for this project. It's you're liable, and that kind of defeats the whole purpose of using a civil engineer. So, number 9s, this is your bedding layer. There's a formula for figuring out your gravel materials. If you do it in yards, supply houses typically do it in either yards or tons. So if you want to know the amount of yards you need for material, it's length times width times depth, and the times depth part is where a lot of people get tripped up. So if you're doing a 10 by 10 patio and you need 6 inches of gravel, well, you have 10 feet by 10 feet, and then your depth is 0.5, because that's half a foot. So you don't want to put 10 feet by 10 feet by 6, because that is going to give you a grossly overestimated number compared to 10 feet by 10 feet by 0.5. So that's going to give you, pull up the calculator, you get 100 square feet times 0.5, so you got 50, and then divide that by 27 to give you cubic yards. And we'll have these formulas listed in a Google Doc for everyone to have access to. So when you divide that by 27, that gives you 1.85 yards. Obviously, you can't sell 1.85 yards. Well, I guess you could if you wanted to, but that's obviously you round up to 2 yards. And if you want to convert that to tons, you do times 1.4. Again, this will be in the Google Doc. So either 2 yards or 3 tons. And that's how you figure out everything. So if you needed 1 inch of number 9s, it'd be the same thing. And we'll have this on a cheat sheet, but it'd be 10 by 10 by, I think an inch as a decimal is 0.125. So it'd be 10 by 10 by 0.125 gets you 12.5, which again, you divide by 27 to get your cubic yards. Mess something up there. 100 times 0.125 is 12.5. Divided by 27 is a half a yard of number 9s, or 1 ton, or 0.6 tons. So you might be able to get half yard from your suppliers. Around here, they don't typically like to do that, so you'd be getting 1 ton of number 9s. This could also be sand. Sand was the most common method for bedding layer for pavers. However, number 9s, which is a 3/16 of an inch limestone down to 1/8 inch, is a open grade bedding layer, which can be used in a dense grade application. It's the last inch, so it's not too big of a deal. You just really need to make sure that your gravel is sloped properly, and you do that by using a laser level and your screed pipes. It's a very important part that we'll cover in the how-to videos. So we need 1 yard of number 9s. We said 3 yards or 4 tons, I believe. I could be wrong on that. Not too important. You get the idea. Edging, pavers, we're just going to do 100. Kind of stick with our example. Gator fabric, this is the geotextile that we use. Comes in 4 by 100, so that's 400 square feet. Obviously, you're not going to use the whole roll on a 100 square foot job. That's up to you whether you want to charge them for the whole roll, or you can do, I would do 0.3 at the very minimum, because you're going to use a quarter of it, but there's some waste there, so I would do 0.3. Polymeric sand, this is going to vary in coverage based on the type of pavers. Usually you can find that information in the spec sheets on the pavers, but tighter joint pavers, you're going to get probably 70 square feet out of a bag of poly sand. Larger joint pavers, like something like Unilocks, Beacon Hills, it's got a bit of a larger joint, or they're quartz stone or something. It's kind of modeled after old granite cobblestone. That's what it is. Those have large joints, and they're going to eat up your polymeric sand, and only going to have their coverage is going to be closer to $20 or $30, 20 to 30 square feet per bag. So you need to know. You need to understand that when you're pricing these jobs, because as you can see, a bag of polymeric sand is quite expensive, and if you need 3 more compared to your estimate, you either have to go to your customer and tell them what happened and see if they'll pay you more, or like I do, and has been quite a crucial change that we made. I wish we would have realized it sooner, but we'll get to that here in just a second. Anyways, so yeah, that's one tidbit about pavers and polymeric sand is the joint changes the coverage of the bag. So you can see we have grass seed here, straw, because for us we plan to clean up the yard as we're done and have it back to better than when we were there before. Whether your customer wants to do this on their own, that's fine. You can take those line items out, and they can put a little sweat equity in it themselves. So demo and removal, this is a labor line item. So for instance, up here we talked about removing the trees and things like that. We would have this down here as a part. Basically, like, we use the demo removal portion as getting the yard to a clean slate. So if we need to remove a couple trees, take the fence apart, and haul out a bunch of dirt, then that would be kind of part of the demo removal. And that way the yard is like at a clean slate, and then when we go to price out the installation portion, we're able to use our production numbers a little bit more accurately, because it's not the production plus removing the extra stuff, it's just the production, just the installing, the moving the gravel, the pavers, the number 9s, whatever. This line item is the actual fee charged by the landfill. There's a couple different fees that we have in here, or in our product catalog. So this is just for solid fill, which is like soil, rocks, roots, things of that nature. Green waste is less expensive to get rid of. Green waste is like landscape debris, trees, things of that nature. And then we have construction debris removal, which is $200 a load, and that's things like lumber, fencing if you have to remove it, metal, more of that kind of trash. But they don't take trash typically. Can't throw away cans and cups and things like that. And so one big, very important part of our estimate, and what helped us years ago, is adding this contingency budget. So typically it's about 10% of the project cost. So this project, for our example, is totaled out to about $9,000. So 10% of $9,000 is $900. So we would add that. Maybe you want to add a little bit more, a little bit less. That's on you. But we usually stick with about 10%. And the reason we put this credit in here is so that it doesn't falsely inflate this number. But we definitely make sure the customer knows what this is, because if company A is giving them a price of, say, $9,000, and you give them a price including your contingency budget, you'd be telling them a price of $10,200 roughly. But in reality, you're thinking it's going to be $9,200. So now there's only a $200 difference between you and company A, and they might have liked you better, so they might choose you, and they might like the fact that you have a contingency budget already in there, thinking ahead. Obviously, we're humans, and we're going to make mistakes. Projects aren't going to always go to plan. We're not going to see every aspect, so that's what this contingency budget helps cover. So that's it. You got your estimate put together. You can request a deposit, add attachment. I don't pay for this function, but you can attach documents here if you like a contract. or site notes, things of that nature. So now it's in a draft. You can approve the draft or send it off for someone to approve it. Once it's approved, the customer can click accept or reject. Once they've accepted it, you can schedule. So once you schedule, so for us, we do a booking deposit for our customers just to have them put some skin in the game, as like what we like to say. Early on, we had customers when we were booked out months in advance. We had a customer or two that got on our schedule, and then as we got closer to the time of installation, they decided to go with another company that could do it faster, which it's not necessarily a big deal, but when you allot space in your schedule for this project and then all of a sudden that's gone, and now you're either shuffling things around or trying to scramble and fill a space, it's just not somewhere we'd like to be. So doing a booking deposit when they say they want to move forward forces them to put skin in the game, and now they're locked in. And if they decide to leave 2 months down the line, they don't get their booking deposit back. That's forfeited. Because you allotted space in your schedule, you made arrangements, so that's just what it is. So if they're not serious, they won't put a booking deposit down, and you won't have your time wasted, or at least wasted anymore. And then we'll go ahead and approve this, just for our example. So now it's been approved. You send them a link. It tells you when it tells you if they open it, when they viewed it last, and then it lets you know if they've accepted it. So once they accept it, you can either convert it into an invoice then and ask for a deposit. Outside of the booking deposit, we also do a material deposit, but we typically collect that closer to the time of installation. If you want, you could collect it sooner on. Say you want to order the materials and secure it, and some companies, they order the materials, get it delivered to their lot, and know that it's sitting there waiting for them ready to use. So kind of depends on how you like to do it. We don't have space to be having whole orders sitting at our lot, and then we like the convenience of the supplier delivering the material with a Moffett so they can place it as close as possible. Let's say you want to edit the estimate and you want to add a product, like they want you to install a bird bath, so you want to add a line item for bird bath. I don't have bird bath as a product, so you can see here, let's try to add it, not there, create product, adjust the name, add your description, price, the type of sale it is. So this is if you really want to get down to what departments in your company are doing what. So sales is, you'd be able to track sales is responsible for 30% of this, maintenance services are 50%, and then installation services are the remaining 20% of your business. So we don't really do that much since we are a one crew company. We focus on higher end projects, one crew focusing on one project at a time, so I don't necessarily worry too much about that. And then whether this item has tax included or not. So you can click save. I'm not going to save it because I don't really want a bird bath product, but that's how that's done. And say, for instance, you don't use the automations and you want to add a customer. It's as easy as create a new customer, and then you can add all these different functions if you want. But customer name, I think you guys can figure out how to fill this out. Email, phone, billing, shipping, more. Pretty self-explanatory at this point. So, but yeah, that covers creating an estimate and converting it to invoice. You can send it right here, click send. You can send it through this app called Wave, or you can get the link and send it through your own way, whether that's email or some other kind of product or program. And then that pretty much covers how to create an estimate. Obviously, different projects are going to have different line items, but it's still the same process. So this is a free app again. It's called Wave. They do invoicing, so you can collect payments through this as well. It gets deposited automatically into your bank account. There is some wait time there, so it's not instantaneous. Checks can be faster, but for instance, like mowing customers or mowing companies, this can be beneficial because you can have reoccurring invoices, so they're sent out each month. And you can save people's credit cards so you can automatically charge them when it comes that time. Whether you want to just send them a reminder like, hey, we're about to charge a card, here's the amount. They'll say good to go, whatever, and then you can click charge. So again, this is a free app called Wave. We will be rolling out our own software here in the next month or two. And once we roll out that software, we will be raising the price of our Skool community, because it's going to be included in the Skool community. And we'll have a bunch of other learning modules as well, kind of getting more advanced in how to run a hardscaping business. Next thing we're going to cover is your business registration and digital footprint. All right, so registering your business is easy. It's free to do. Well, let me rephrase that. You don't have to pay someone to do it. There's plenty of services out there that offer, that's their whole offer, is to file like an LLC or register your business. It is $125 no matter what. That's the fee from the state, which you can do yourself. You don't necessarily need to pay someone to do it for you. However, it is a little bit easier to say, let a company, I think one of them that comes to mind is maybe Taylor Brands. They handle the whole process for you. It's not very complicated. It's something that can be done relatively easy. Maybe we'll cover that more in depth later, but we'll assume that you'll be able to figure that out. And I think it's a little bit different in each state, so it'd be sort of tough to cover each state. But again, we might touch on that later. So part of registering your business is, one, register with the state, whether you're doing LLC or a solo private company, whichever. The next thing you're going to want to start doing is establishing your digital footprint as well. So it kind of goes hand in hand. Registering your business, then your business checking account. Website might not be first on your list, because that does cost a little bit, and it's typically a monthly cost. So social media is usually the big one, and then getting your site listed with directories. Directories are like search engines or yellow pages, if you know what that is. That's an online directory still around. It used to be a big book that was delivered to your house and had a big listing of all the local businesses and even private residents. So part of establishing that digital footprint is registering with all the social medias. The more area your business name, and if you can, the sooner you get a website, the better. That's going to help with your whole digital footprint. But the more you can have your business listed in all these different websites, for instance, like Instagram, Facebook, Angie's List, Google, Yahoo, Bing, TikTok, Thumbtack. There's a few other ones, but having your business at least registered with one of their free profiles puts your information in a bunch of other websites, which in Google's eyes and for SEO purposes, that gives you more, what am I trying to say? That gives you more reputation, a stronger reputation in the eyes of Google, so you're more likely to rank higher. Now, every other company doing that, it's a bit tougher, so there's still some other things that you have to do to try and set yourself apart from everyone else, but you still have to do this at the foundation level. So there is a paid way to do that. There's a company out there, I think it's called Easy Local, and they basically, they verify your information across all these directories if you've already started. Sometimes they get automatically filled in by those said companies. However, Easy Local makes it easy for you to check all your directory listings and then make updates themselves. So you put the information into Easy Local, then Easy Local goes through and corrects them all for you. It's a bit of a process, but you can do it yourself. It's a really time-consuming process, or you can pay Easy Local to do it, which is going to save you a lot of time. However, I know how it is getting started. You don't have a limitless budget, so some of those things, $80 a month here, $50 a month here, kind of adds up, especially when it's something that you can do yourself over a few periods of time, a few nights a week. And if you don't do anything else, the big one you want to have is a Google profile or Google My Business profile. I think it's changed now. There's not like a Google My Business function anymore. I think it's under the, it's controlled through the Google Maps application, or that part of their application. But anyways, it's still where you manage all your business info in Google's search engine. So what your name is, the address, phone number, and you want all those to be consistent. So like
on social media, your YouTube, your website, everything. You want your address to be the same. You want your phone number to be the same. You want your business to be the same. Everything. You don't want to have like Joe's Landscaping here and then Joe's Landscaping LLC there, and then this number here and that number there. That doesn't help establish credibility. So make sure your name, your address, and phone number are all matching everywhere you go on all your directory listings. All right, so we're going to go over our overhead calculator. It's pretty straightforward, but it basically tracks all your fixed expenses plus some of your variable expenses. So we'll go through it real quick here. Well, I say real quick, but starting off, we got your owner, the salary that you would like to make, your first salary employee, whether this is a crew leader or foreman. So when you enter in this value here, it automatically enters updates for the yearly price. So if you added a new guy or a new person, say they're part-time, but their salary is $2,000, updates up here automatically for you. So if you have your truck, pieces of equipment, you can add more here. Say you needed more room, you just simply click here on the right, insert row above or below, depending on what you prefer, and then continue filling on. So this equipment recovery line item is basically taking these numbers here and doubling them. And the reason for that is that, well, yes, you obviously want to make your payments and pay off your equipment or your truck, but what about replacing that piece of equipment after it's ran its course? Ideally, you'd like to buy it outright, so that's what this equipment recovery line item is. So up here, it's factored in that you're paying it off at that time, but then you're also should be hopefully saving this money for the time that you want to buy a new one or replace the existing one. So it's essentially charging for your equipment twice. If you don't want to do that, that's fine, take it out of there. But that's just one way we like to recover our costs. So moving on, you have some area here for different services, like different marketing services, whether you use an agency or it's just the rough budget you have for your paid advertising. Have that there, and it'll calculate towards the bottom. You also got your shop rent, business insurance, website, phone, license, accounting, so on and so forth. Here we have miscellaneous. This could be office supplies that you might need, just kind of whatever. These are some extra buffers basically in this area. You have a repairs and maintenance line item. You can really kind of determine this off your previous years. So say last year you had $6,000 in expenses for repairs and maintenance. You can basically break that up over the 12 months, and that's what you see here. So larger businesses are going to have a larger buffer, but you'll figure that out as the years go on. And this next one is a business profit buffer, kind of just an extra, almost contingency budget in a way. It's an extra $1,000, whether that goes towards repairs and maintenance, just helps make sure that we're pricing jobs accordingly. It's just an extra buffer already cooked into our overhead or operating numbers. And so then all that gets totaled down here at the bottom. This is your monthly fixed overhead costs. That's what I like to call it. Just under $18,000. Breaks down to $215,000 over the year. Per week, it's almost $4,500 on a 20-day work week, or a 20-day monthly average. That's about $900 per day. Or if you want to look at it from a 365 viewpoint, it's almost $600 a day. But I don't know any business or home service business like hardscaping and outdoor living that's going to be working 365. So you need to kind of base it on the amount of days that you have. So if you're in a seasonally constrained area, you might only have 180 days or 150 days of work. So you need to price that into your structure, which we will go over right now. So right here you can see to change this to a 15-day overhead, because it's automatically set to 20-day. But if you want to change it to a 15-day overhead, which that's kind of how we operate because of our seasonal area, which I already have it changed to G29, which is this number here.
That's our roughly what it costs per month to run the business. Or not per month, per day. So that gets factored over here. So that number gets turned into a per day to a per hour figure. And then that gets broken up over the number of employees you have. So let's say you have 2 employees. You pay them combined $40 an hour. You can now see the average cost per employee with $5 per hour in benefits. We can go over that later more, but for right now we're adding $5 per hour for benefits. That cost to you is roughly $102.29. That's your cost, which also factors in payroll taxes and things like that. So to make 10% on each employee, you would have to charge almost $114 per hour per employee. And that's how you figure out your overhead or your operating numbers. Now, you can see here, if you had 3 employees and you paid them a total of $60 an hour, you can see how that dropped your numbers significantly. Now, to make 10%, it's at $86 compared to $114 or whatever it was. So yeah, you can update this daily if you had to, but it's probably more of a monthly thing. And then once you have that established, you can add those labor rates into your estimating software. So if you want to make 10 or 20% or whatever it is, you change your price here, amount of hours the project's going to take, and you'll be good to go. All right, so we're going to go through this Google sheet here and show you an example of what I mean by tracking your jobs for your employees. So they can add images over these cells, record their hours for each day, add in little notes like you see here. This is just an example. Guy set 4 steps today, had to cut 3 of them. Compactor broke down and it took an hour to fix. There was 3 crew members that day, worked 8 to 5, so a total of 27 hours. Here's the next day. Did some blocks. You can put whatever you want. Guys messed up 2 rows, whatever. But then you can add your hours over here. 24. Just making this up kind of. And you can have all your hours recorded over here in this red row, and then create a formula, which I have another spreadsheet that's already pre-made, but just for our example, this is how I'm showing you. Go here to add a formula, add some, and then we will say, I'll turn it back sideways, this makes it a little bit easier on the phone. Sum of that to that. Source that. So you can see it did the math for you, and so far you have 104 hours in the project, which you can go back and reference to your estimate, or reference to your estimate and make sure you're staying on track. So also in this sheet we have our job costing calculator. This is pretty straightforward as well. These are abbreviations or material names for the receipts. These are the amounts for the receipts. So it totals them up here. The total cost of materials is $15,322 as our example. Your labor is probably going to be more than $4,000 if you have $15,000 in expenses. So your labor is probably going to be close to that. We'll just do $12,000. There's your labor cost, and then you build the customer, because obviously we got to make a profit. You build the customer. See, 15, 12, it's 27. You build the customer 32,000. And so that means you made a profit of $4,677, or about 14%, a little over 14%. And so what we do with this is duplicate this sheet for each customer, and that way we can go back and reference it for each job. But that covers job tracking and overhead. Or really, it's really a job tracking sheet that is more for
the notes of the project. And then with our overhead calculator, we also have a project calculator on that same sheet that you can enter in the labor quantity plus the material quantity, and double check it with your estimate and find out what your profit margin actually was for that specific project. Then you can save these under the same folder with your Google Docs and your Google Sheet. That way you have the notes from the job from your crew, and then the actual profit and loss statement for the job, and go back and reference those whenever you need to. So like I said, we'll cut over to a screen recording of that on the computer and explain that more in detail. To figure out your prices with the calculator, you'll need to get your supplier prices as well. Around here, there's 3 to 4 different suppliers that we use that are within our vicinity. So some of them carry the same products and we know the prices are the same at each place. Some carry other products that aren't available at each other. So in your estimating software, you'll need to know which prices you're going to be using, or have a specific line item for, say, company A's price for gravel and company B's price for gravel, because sometimes it's not worth driving across town to pick up a load of gravel or having them deliver it from this side of town. It might take longer, might not be able to get there. Delivery fee could vary. So you want to know all the different suppliers that you're going to be working with, and their prices are probably going to vary just a little bit, or the cost for you to come get them could vary a little bit, whether you have to drive farther, whatever it may be. So you'll want to know for each supplier. We kind of talked about this earlier as well. You're going to want to get the contact info for all the local reps, for all the product reps, whether that's block and paver reps, the sand and mortar, or cleaners and sealers. Those are typically a different company. So you're going to want to have all the contact info for all those reps, because like I said earlier, those are going to be great resources to have in your back pocket and be able to call them in the middle of a job and ask them questions, and they'll have recommendations on which products are going to be better for certain scenarios. So it's almost like having a teacher in your back pocket. And also, a lot of these supply houses and even the manufacturers have training days. Some even have paid training classes. I know when I was getting started out, the local producer, or the local manufacturer around here, which is Redding Rock, they have a paver training class, which is hands-on. It's part classroom, part hands-on. And then they also have a retaining wall class. They have continuing education as well. And then you can even become part of their rewards program, where you get different kind of swag, tool bags, things like that. So you want to, like I said before, you want to establish a good relationship with all your suppliers, product reps, even the supplier field reps. Those guys are going to be helpful. They'll deliver samples to your customers, bring stuff to the job site. A lot of times they'll bring lunch, Gatorade, swag, all those things. So the better relationship you have with them, the better off you're going to be. And so now you've set your prices with the job tracking and overhead section, the overhead calculator. Let's talk about how you set your prices for your materials. So you'll need to get a supplier price list for all the different materials that you'll be using: pavers, blocks, gravel, mulch, plants, everything. The suppliers will most likely have a retail price list and a wholesale or contractor's price list. Obviously, you're going to want to get the wholesale/contractor's price, because it's cheaper and you're going to get a better pricing compared to the customers that you're serving. Once you get that price list, you can either make it a point to add all those products in there if you think you're going to go through them all, or you add them as you need them. That's how I did it when I was starting out. I just basically went through my estimate, and if I needed a new product, I added it at that point. I didn't necessarily make it a point to sit down and add everything that I thought I needed, especially because I felt like I could be adding things that I might use once or never, and then I wasted the time to add it in there. So it was time that was going to be spent one way or the other, and I felt like I would do it at the time of the estimate. So yes, it did slow down the creation of the estimate process, but it likely could have saved me some time. So once you get your supplier price sheet list, typical markup in the industry is about 30%. Now you can choose to do 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, whatever you want. It's up to you, but your market is going to kind of dictate that. Well, sort of dictate in that you might want to charge 60% markup, but if you're not getting jobs, then you need to either refine your sales process, dial back your prices, or a couple other things. But
the typical is about 30%. Might be more with higher end projects, and then low to mid end projects you might be charging maybe 25%, 20%. Either way, that's how we come up with our prices. So say you have gravel that is, let's just pull up the calculator. Say the product that you are wanting to figure out is $30 for you, and then there is, what did I say, 7 cents tax. So you got 30 times 0.07, which that's 7 cents, or 7%. I mean, that's 7%. 0.07 is 7%. So you'll be paying $32.10 on that product. Well, now you want to mark it up your 30%. So now you do, so plus 30. So the total for the product that you paid is $32.10, and then you want to add 30% to that. So you could do either times 30, or you could do times 30. It's $9.63. So to get your total, you add, so for that $30 product, you should be charging $41.73 per unit. So whether that's a ton, a block, whatever it is. And basically repeat that process for all your different supplies and materials.